All right, so this is the foldable that we're making. I'm not showing you how I'm folding it or any of those parts. I'm just going to fill it in. So we are reviewing over translations, reflections, rotations, and then I'm going to add in dilation so that we have that part. All right, so starting with reflections, I know I'm skipping down a part because I'm going to go in the same order that we've gone through this. Reflections across the x-axis. So this is where we would have our axis. This is the y-axis, and this is the x-axis. And we're going to reflect across the x-axis. So that means that this is our x-axis, what we are going to highlight. You would have your original image, your pre-image, so something right here. And we would end up on the opposite side. So we're going to end up with our prime here. This would be our pre-image. So our pre to our prime, and our prime has the apostrophe. Now, we would have a rule where we know that we are going to flip over the x-axis. And when we flip over the x-axis, we can see that the x value did not change, but we went down 3. So we're going to go up 3, and our x value did not change, but our y value did. So our rule that we would follow for this would be that we started out with an xy value, and what changed in this particular case is that our x stayed the same and our y value becomes opposite. And it's important that we don't say negative, but our x is the same and y is opposite. And we want to point out that negative means opposite, because that's really important for us here. All right, so moving down to when we're flipping across the y-axis, here is our coordinate plane, or our axes. Here's our y-axis, here's our x-axis. Again, here we're going to flip across. We're going to highlight the y-axis. We're going to start, let's say, here with our pre-image. And we're going to flip across to our prime. We are flip over the y-axis. And again, when we're looking at this, we have a rule. And our rule here is we have x, y, and we're going to see here that we went 1, 2, 3 to the left. So now we're going to go 1, 2, 3 to the right. And our y value did not change, but our x value became opposite. So we went opposite x, and we kept the same y. So opposite x, same y. And again, negatives in math mean opposite. And we want to keep using that key word, just because if we were to look at -6, -5, and we are going to flip over the x-axis, we are going to use the rule x opposite y. That would then be -6. The opposite of -5 would be a +5. So we want to make sure that we use the correct rule there. All right, so that goes through that reflection. Now let's look at our translation. Translations are a slide. We are adding or subtracting. So again, it's just a simple slide, left, right, up or down. So a right, a unit. Now you're going to notice that we're using these variables here. And so we've got a right slide or a left slide. So these two, right and left, are specific to the x-axis, and up and down are specific to the y-axis. right A units would be add A or any number. So add any number to the X value. So it would be X plus 3, comma, Y. So we're adding to our X value. Whereas going left would be to subtract A, which is again any number, to the X value. And again, you can see here going right or going left is the same thing as adding or subtracting. So it would be X minus 6, comma, Y. We didn't do anything to the Y, we just did something to the X value. Then going up or down would be going up would be add any number B to the Y value. So that would be X comma Y plus 4. And then going down would be to subtract any number B to the Y value. So that would be X comma Y minus 10. In this case, if you are someone that is like a Miss Witten and you like to count, so in this case, I would count to the right 3, or I would count to the left 6, or in this case, I would count to the up 4 or count down 10. You can always count. You do not have to do the adding or the subtracting. You can just count, and that works perfect. Or if you're like a Miss Collins and you like to do the math instead to get your new coordinate pair, that also works. But I want to make sure that you understand that there are 2 ways to do this. So those are your translation and reflection rules. And again, we've done this in class, and we're going to practice this again. So make sure that you have that, and then let's move into what are our rotation rules. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write down all the rules right here so that we can start fresh with those. So give me a moment to get all those written. All right, so what you're going to notice that I wrote at the top is I wanted to make sure that I gave you guys a specific key. The reason why is because we have clockwise and we have counterclockwise. And what you're going to notice here is that 90 degrees clockwise and 270 counterclockwise are the same spot, and 90 degrees counterclockwise and 270 clockwise are going to be the same spot, and 180 is always the same. So essentially you only have to remember 3 specific rules, and that's why I wanted to go over this. So I put those at the top so that you guys can see that. So 90 degrees clockwise is also the same as 270 degrees counterclockwise. And I want to abbreviate it like that. The reason why I say that is because here's my coordinate plane, and I'm going to initially always start right here. So that's my degrees 1, so 0 degrees. Then we have 90 degrees. Well, we got to do in the clockwise. So this would be 90 degrees clockwise. Then 180 clockwise. And then you have 270 degrees clockwise. But if we were to go in the opposite direction, you would see that this would be 90 degrees counterclockwise, 180 counterclockwise. See how counterclockwise stayed in the same position, and this is 270 degrees counterclockwise. So I'm wanting you guys to see that both of these right here are the exact same thing for that position. And the rule that you need to remember is you take your X and your Y, and you're going to flip the 2 numbers so they become Y and X, even though they're still going to be X and Y, but Now your x has become the opposite of what it originally was. And we've gone through that in class and talked about that, but we'll talk about it a little bit more on Monday. But you have a rule that you are going to follow. You can use that little visual again that I just used for that 90 degrees counterclockwise, because that is also 270 degrees clockwise. And this rule states that the y becomes opposite and the x stays the same. And so we flipped the two numbers, but the y value became opposite. And again, we can look at that visual in class when we are rotating the actual axes, and it shows how those actually change. And no matter what you do with a 180 degrees, those are always opposite of whatever it is. And so you just make the x value and the y value opposite. Honestly, this goes into calculus and trigonometry for the specific reasons why, and we're not getting into the details. We need to be specific to just understanding the rules right now in 8th grade. As the higher you get up in math, we'll learn a little bit more. So our goal is to focus on just these specific rules, and then you'll know a little bit more the higher up math that you get, and that's what we're focusing on, specific with the rotations, and then we'll go from there. Again, 3 rules is what we want to remember with those. Now, dilations is an enlargement or reduction, so that means something is going to get bigger or smaller, like the pupil of your eye. So an enlargement means that we're going to use the letter K. So K is being multiplied. And so you are given your XY, and your XY is going to be multiplied by that K. K times X, K times Y. And for it to be an enlargement, K must be bigger than 1. And then with a reduction, we had that XY as well, and you're going to be multiplying it. It's the exact same rule. However, K must be less than 1, but bigger than 0. So something like a half or 0.75 or something along those lines kind of gives you an idea. And we will talk a little bit more about that in class. We haven't done dilations, but I wanted to give you that specific. This also has another rule that we use. It's new over old, or prime over pre. And that fraction will actually give you whatever your K is. And so that'll help you. All right, make sure if you have any questions that you ask your teacher.